when you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players. You have a great organization, and you tell them one thing: just win, baby.
You are listening to Just Pod Baby, a Las Vegas Raiders podcast brought to you by silverandblacktoday.com. And now your host, Evan Groat.
Let's go, Raider Nation. Welcome back to Just Pod Baby, part of the Silver and Black Today Media Group. We are now just a few days away from the start of Free Agency 2021, and there's a lot to cover tonight as we get you all set up for what should be an active offseason of additions for your Las Vegas Raiders. As I said, Just Pod Baby is brought to you by Silver and Black Today, and I've got a busy show planned for you this week. There were some more roster transactions that went down, including a big trade. We're going to go through and discuss some of those moves and where the Raiders currently sit with cap space. Also in segment one, I'm going to touch on some of the position groups that I expect the Raiders to be active in targeting next week when free agency begins, and even toss out some names of players that I like and think are good fits. And later in the show, we'll be joined by our guest this week, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic. We will chat with Ted about the current state of the Raiders, and we're going to touch on free agents that he sees as fits with the Raiders and maybe where they should be looking to spend some of the money. But tonight we begin with the trade of Trent Brown. Brown was heavily scrutinized by the fan base all season long, and many speculated that this day would come that he would not be back with the team. And that all came to fruition this week with the Raiders and the Patriots agreed to make a deal to send Brown to the Patriots for a 2022 fifth-round pick. In return, the Patriots would receive Trent Brown and a seventh-round 2022 pick. So they're swapping picks in 2022, and you know, nothing franchise-changing as far as the trade compensation is concerned, but the big benefit for the Raiders, of course, is freeing up $14 million worth of much-needed salary cap space. And so the Trent Brown era as a Raider ends. And when you look back on his 2 years, you know, it was a major disappointment. There's really no way around it. And I know he played well in the 2019 season. But, you know, after they threw a ton of money at him, you know, at the end of the day, he just couldn't stay healthy, and you know he came into this past season what looked to be out of shape and overweight, and that seemingly played a role in his inability in 2020 to stay on the field. And I'm not really going to get into it any further than that. I've talked about it a lot on recent shows. We talked about it last week with Mo Moton, so I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, and we're I'm moving on, and so are the Raiders. I want to touch on another roster transaction that went down this week, and that was the release of LaMarcus Joyner, which was another move that was expected. Joyner joins Trent Brown and Tyrell Williams and Antonio Brown, and the list goes on and on of failed offseason acquisitions in recent years by Mike Mayock and John Gruden. And there's no doubt about it, they got to do a better job here in this current offseason. They have to hit on some of these free agents. So that'll be a big thing that we keep an eye on, as free agency gets underway next week. Now, say what you want about Gruden as a coach and a play caller. I really wish that this guy would just give up control of roster decisions. I really would. I don't know how you guys feel. How do you feel about that? Should he give up some control to Mike Mayock? Should he trust his general manager and his scouting department? Or do you not have a problem with John Gruden having full control of roster decisions? And I don't know about any of you guys out there. I don't know if you heard what Mike Lombardi, his comments from this week. He was a guest on the Pat McAfee show. I saw it on Twitter. If you have not heard it yet or seen it yet, look it up. Okay, look it up. And, I thought what Lombardi had to say, I thought he was spot on, to be honest. He talked about Gruden's failures in signing players over the years, and he lays out why Gruden has these problems and why he believes these issues will continue to happen. And I know what many of you are probably saying out there to yourselves right now. I know how you feel about Mike Lombardi, so I get it. But the words are true, in my opinion. The words are very true. Go back and look at Gruden's track record, even from his days in Tampa Bay when he had full control of the roster. There's definitely something there. So go back and look. There's the data is there. All right. And if you hadn't heard Lombardi's statements yet, his comments, go back and check those out if you didn't hear it yet as well. Now, in other news today, we got word that Nick Kwiatkowski and Corey Littleton, they each restructured their deals to free up additional money, $7.1 million to be exact. And that's a good thing. So with the trade of Trent Brown this week and the release of LaMarcus Joyner, and in addition to the restructures, it was, let me see what I have, $2.7 million for Kwiatkowski and $4.4 million for Corey Littleton. That gets the Raiders to about $40 million under the cap. And they still have one more cost-cutting move that can be made, and that is Marcus Mariota. Now, I'm not quite sure what the holdup is there. Obviously, they would prefer to trade him, but I don't think teams are dumb. They're not going to trade for a guy with that contract. I believe it could go up to north around $18 million. So if a team traded for Mariota and he played and reached some of those incentives that are in his contract, they could have to pay him $18 million. So teams aren't dumb. They see what's going on with the Raiders. They know he will not be back. I still don't see any way he is back at that number, $11 million or $10 million with the Raiders. So they're just going to continue to wait the Raiders out, and hopefully he hits the open market. Right, that's what these teams are thinking, and they'll just sign him then, and possibly at a more team friendly deal. So I do expect that move to happen soon, and that will put the Raiders over $50 million in cap space, and that is a good chunk of change, and they should certainly be able to go out and fill some of these voids that they have, and even go out and sign a couple top flight guys if they choose to. And that, of course, that all leads me to the focus of tonight's show, and that's free agency. We're going to get you all primed and ready to go for when things kick off next week. The legal tampering period gets underway Monday, but nothing is official until Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And there's a lot of work to be done, no doubt about it. Starting on the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line needs to be addressed. There's a major lack of depth on the interior right now. You have two linemen under contract with David Irving and Maurice Hurst. And, I can't even recall, maybe you guys can, I can't even recall the last time they had a presence on the interior of that defensive line that could consistently generate pressure and get after the quarterback. I mean, think about it. I struggle to come up with someone who consistently brought that to the table. So I do think they need to make that a priority, whether it's in free agency or the draft. The edge rush, they also need some help. Yes, even after spending draft capital, going back to Arden Key, and then it was Cleveland Farrell, Max Crosby, they signed Carl Nassib, and it's the same old story. No pass rush, low sack numbers. Here we are sitting again as one of the worst teams in the NFL as far as sack production is concerned. Next on the list has to be free safety. Mo Moton and I talked about it last week. Both of us agree this is a position we would like to see the Raiders go and be very aggressive with. Go out and get a real leader and someone who can come in and bring some stability to the back end. That young secondary, they need a leader back there. And so I do hope they go out and get somebody there. Slot corner is another position of need unless Gruden believes that Amik Robertson is ready to make the jump. He didn't look ready last year, that's for sure. In the limited time that he got, he did not look like he was at all ready. We'll see what happens here in year two. Perhaps they added a cornerback, and maybe I've heard some talk about maybe the idea of moving Damon Arnett to the slot next year. So they've got some options there. I don't think slot corner is necessarily a pressing need right now because they do have some options where they could maybe move Arnett. They still have Amik Robertson. but they got options, and that's a good thing. So it's something you want to keep an eye on. And last, what happens with Nicholas Morrow? Will they try to bring him back? And will they add some more depth at the linebacker? I think right now, when you look at what they currently have, they've got Littleton, Kwiatkowski, Javen White, and Tanner Muse. So they need to bring in some more bodies in that room as well. But what I want to do now is I want to take a quick look at some guys that I see as, potential fits for the Raiders here in free agency. Let's start with defensive tackles. Like many of you, I see what's going on out there on Twitter, and I see this name pop up quite a bit, Larry Ogunjobi, who is with the Browns. And I remember liking him coming out of, I think it was University of Charlotte, I believe, a few years ago in the draft. And, you're going to hear this common theme with me throughout the evening here tonight, the show. He's only 26 years old. You're going to hear me say that a lot. I'm looking for guys who are not, on the back nine of their career. I'm looking for guys who are still kind of ascending or trending in the upward direction. And I think Ogunjobi kind of fits that he checks those boxes for me. Okay, he has 14.5 sacks in 4 seasons. Is he a world beater? No, he's not going to come in there and be Aaron Donald. Okay, but he also played alongside a talented D-line in Cleveland with Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon, and so I understand he had a little help, but I think you get a young guy who has plenty of experience, and he has shown some flashes early in his career. And what I like most about Ogunjobi is I don't believe he comes with a large price tag. And I think that's something that the Raiders have to keep in mind, whether they have the $50 million to spend or not. I do think they should be looking to make smart decisions with their money, not just toss it at, the next guy like we've seen in recent years. Now, moving out to the edge, 2 guys I really like are Carl Lawson and Trey Hendrickson. I talked about these guys a few weeks ago when I was on Raider Nation Radio with Scott. And what jumps off the chart about me, or jumps off the page for me, is when you look at the number of snaps that these 2 guys have played and how productive they were able to be with those snaps. I recently spent some time watching Carl Lawson film, and he looks like a guy who's got a really quick first step. He uses his hands real well, and he's got a decent array of pass rush moves as well. So I really like him, and I think with a larger role, he could really be like an 8-sack kind of guy. I think his career best right now is like 5, but that was, again, with only playing about 60% of the snaps. So I think with a larger role, he could definitely be a much more productive player. Trey Hendrickson is coming off a career year with 13.5 sacks with the Saints. And, what I'm curious to find out was that an outlier or is this guy for real? Was it the fact that he finally was given an opportunity? We don't really know. That's one of the big risks, I think, with Hendrickson. But I do like him. And like Ogunjobi, as I mentioned, Hendrickson is also only 26 years old. And I don't know why, but he's a name that is kind of flying under the radar right now. I'm not really hearing a lot about him. I'm reading a lot about guys like Yannick Ngakoue and Bud Dupree and Leonard Floyd, even Melvin Ingram. But guys like Hendrickson and even Lawson to some degree are really flying under the radar. And because of the position that the play, the edge, defensive end, the edge rusher, you could see some of these bigger names go for a lot of money. I mean, these guys get paid in free agency, these edge rushers. So I do think that there's a chance that guys like Trey Hendrickson and Carl Lawson might come a little bit less expensive. Rather than $17, $18 million a year, maybe you're looking at $12 million a year for these guys. So those are 2 players I would not mind, some money being spent on. Now moving back to the safety position, I should say, you had Marcus May, Marcus Williams, and Justin Simmons all receive the franchise tag this past week. And the problem that creates now is that you've got a guy like John Johnson and Anthony Harris who, they now move up the charts. They're probably 2 of the higher rated safeties on a lot of these teams' lists. And the market for them now just became that much more expensive. That price tag just increased dramatically for those two guys. So if you want to bring in one of these players, you're going to have to be willing to give up a decent amount of money, and you got to be aggressive, and you got to pay him. Now, if you follow Vinny B from the Review Journal, he's been pounding the table for weeks now for John Johnson. And he's familiar with Johnson from his days covering the Rams. And I know I sound like a broken record, but again, he's 25 years old. I really like that. I don't want to see a bunch of 31, 32, 33-year-olds being brought in here. Yeah, you can sprinkle a few of those guys in. They definitely need some veterans on this team, especially on the defense. But I want to see the core of these free agents, just getting to their prime years. And on top of Johnson only being 25, he's a pretty decent safety as well. His calling card is his ability to in coverage, which is something that is badly needed in that Raiders secondary. And he finished the 2020 season as Pro Football Focus's third highest graded safety overall, and also ranked third in coverage among safeties. And I said it at the top, Mayak and Gruden, if you're listening, go get a safety. I don't think it would be wise to rely on another young rookie safety, bringing in a rookie safety through the draft. I'm not so sure that's a great idea when you already have so much youth in Arnett and Abram and Mullen in that secondary, and who knows where they're going to be going with the slot position. Maybe it's Robertson. So go get yourself a veteran. Now, some of the other names that I like, and I'm sure you like as well, obviously Anthony Harris is a guy that is got to be at top of the list. Trey Boston, and even Malik Hooker. I know he's had some issues, injury history coming off an Achilles. Has not quite lived up to that first round draft pick that he was a couple years ago. But I do think if they can get him right, there's some upside there. Let's hop over to the offensive side of the ball now and start with the tackle position. I think the plan here should be to bring in a veteran who can start some games if needed. Not necessarily a top-end guy. It doesn't have to be the number one tackle on the market. I don't think they should be going after Trent Williams. But I think you should bring in a dependable guy with some experience and then look to draft your long-term option with one of your earlier picks in this upcoming draft. Okay, even if that means the first round pick. Some players that are available that would check that box for me would be Kelvin Beachum, Russell Okung, both veterans in the league, plenty of starts under their belt, and I know that they both have played primarily the left tackle position. And would they be willing to come over and play right tackle? Can they even transition to that? I remember when Donald Penn was asked to do that a few years ago, he talked about how difficult it was to move from the left side to the right side. So, I'm not even sure if something like that could actually happen. But there are a couple names that I wanted to toss out there. Rick Wagner is another name. And Wagner spent one season with Green Bay last year. He was signed to a 1 year, or I believe it was a 2 year deal last offseason, but only lasted 1 year with them. And he's got plenty of experience at right guard. So I do think there are some options out there that you can bring in to hold the fort down and then draft someone, and hopefully that rookie can come in, compete, and win the starting job. Now, the guard position, we have heard that they would like to bring back Richie Incognito, and I would be fine with that. He knows the system, but how does he come back from that Achilles injury at his age? That would be a concern for me. But if you can get him back at a low salary, I would be comfortable with that. Denzel Good is another option who is familiar with the scheme. He can play guard and tackle. That versatility is just always a bonus with these offensive linemen. But outside of those two guys, you've got Kevin Zeitler. Jermaine Ifedi is another guy I have here written in my notes. Now, Zeitler, more of a bridge player because of his age, but I do think he's got a couple good years left in him. But I think Ifedi is an interesting guy, still only 26, and he has experience both at right tackle, and this past season he played guard, and his play really improved. He struggled. He struggled a bit as a tackle earlier in his career. He was a number one first round draft pick, 31 overall with the Seahawks. but he started all but 4 games in his last 5 years. So he's reliable, he's dependable. And I also know that he's had some penalty issues. Going back to his days in Seattle, he was one of the highest penalized tackles in the NFL. But he really cleaned that up last year in Chicago. He had a career low 4 penalties in 16 starts. So again, I like the idea of that he's youthful, still only 26. I feel there's room to improve. He showed improvement last year. The position change really benefited him. And I think he also offers that position flexibility should they need him to kick out to tackle, in a pinch if there's ever an injury that occurs. So I do like him as well. The next big one on offense would be at wide receiver. And, guys, I got to be honest, when you look at the list of the names of available free agents, it does not wow me whatsoever. There's some decent guys out there, don't get me wrong, but not any real alphas, Juju Smith, he's been linked to the Raiders. He's more of a number 2. He's really not a true number 1 receiver. Kenny Galladay, I think he's more of a number 1. He's had a couple 1,000-yard seasons, but he's gonna demand top dollar, so I don't see him as an option. Corey Davis is an intriguing guy. I have him highlighted here on my list. He has a great combo of size and speed, another former first-round pick. But what we're going to see is because of the lack of impact receivers on the market, I think these top receivers, Juju, Galladay, maybe even a Corey Davis, they're going to get paid. And I just don't know if the Raiders are going to be willing to pay, $10, $11 million for a receiver. So, to be honest right now, Nelson Aguilar might be the best option. I don't know what the price tag on him is going to be. I think he might try to test the market, but I do think he wants to be back with the Raiders. He had a career year with them, so he has rapport with the quarterback. He brought some of that leadership qualities that they're looking for, and as long as the money works out, you could possibly see the two sides reunite. And then, besides the players that I've already mentioned, you've got guys like AJ Green, Larry Fitzgerald, Emmanuel Sanders, Marvin Jones, Alshon Jeffrey, Sammy Watkins. I just don't see it. The one other guy that I do see here on my list in front of me that I like is Curtis Samuel. But he's more of a slot receiver. He's more of a gadget type player. And I don't have the confidence or faith that Gruden would use his skill set properly. Because you got a guy that you could use like that right now in Henry Ruggs, and that might be another problem. He's very similar to a Henry Ruggs, I guess. Doesn't have the deep speed that Ruggs has. But, we didn't see Gruden really utilizing Ruggs' full skill set last year, so I don't think Samuel would be a fit here, but he is a guy that I see on the list that I think is a good player. And as far as the running backs go, I would expect them to bring in a veteran behind Josh Jacobs. Right now it's only Jacobs and Richard. Vic Tafur says he thinks Booker could be brought back, Devontae Booker. But there's some names out there that I like. I really like Marlon Mack. Just a couple seasons ago, he was a 1,000-yard rusher with the Colts. And he's a guy that can catch the ball out of the backfield. He also is coming off a torn Achilles. But I think his value will be down. And I think he's a guy that would be a great compliment behind Josh Jacobs. What about Jamal Williams from Green Bay? A bigger back, right? They don't really have that. They haven't had that. Think about the Zach Crockett days, right? When you get inside that 5-yard line and you can just pound that ball in there. Okay, that might be a role for him. Mike Davis from Carolina, he filled in real nice for Christian McCaffrey while he was out last year. Wayne Gallman, another guy who filled in nice last season when he was given a larger role when Saquon Barkley was hurt. So there's plenty of quality veteran running backs out there, and that might not be a position you see them sign early in free agency. That might come later on in, wave 2 or 3 of free agency. All right, guys, I've talked long enough. Time to get a break in here, and when we return, we'll chat with our guest tonight, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic, and get some of his thoughts on some of these free agents and what he believes the Raiders will do to address some of their needs. We are back for segment 2 of Just Pod Baby. Free agency is just around the corner with the legal tampering period to begin on Monday and the new league year on Wednesday. And to help us get it all sorted out is our guest this week, Ted Nguyen from The Athletic. Ted can also be heard on the State of the Nation podcast. He does a great job with his film breakdown and review, so we're glad to have him on this week with us. Ted, thanks so much for joining us this week. How are you?
Doing well. It's weekend coming up, and excited for next week. I think free agency is going to be crazy. So many quality players out there.
Absolutely. Ted, I want to start off tonight by just getting some of your thoughts on some of the cuts that have been made to free up some money on this roster, particularly along the offensive line. Though, is what we're seeing with the shakeup along the offensive line, do you think that's more of a direct reflection of the salary cap issues that all teams are dealing with right now in 2021? Or do you think it's more of a philosophy change with the Raiders? Over the years, they've spent a lot of money on the offensive line, and the return on that investment has been a little bit questionable. So what's your take on that?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I do believe it's more to do with the salary cap situation and just knowing that the guard market is so saturated this year. I think that they had an idea that there was going to be a lot of quality guards on the market, and they could get a starter that is equal to the level, maybe a little less, and pay a fraction of the price that they were paying for those guys. So I think they saw an opportunity there. And I think it was a smart decision, as much as they love Gabe Jackson, as much as they love Richie Incognito, and maybe there's a chance that those two guys do come back at a smaller price. But I just think that you see a lot of these throughout the NFL. You see a lot of teams just cutting these high-priced guards or positions that are seen as a little lower value than some of the higher value positions. Which is why the guard market is so flooded. So I just think that they see an opportunity to cut that part of their payroll down significantly while not losing a lot of quality if they could get two starters around that same level. And there's a good chance they do get two starters around the same level, if not get those two guys back. And also, I think Vegas has a significant advantage with their, no state income tax, especially this year when money is limited. So I think they have confidence that they can either bring those two guys back or they can attract two quality starters.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something they have an advantage of there with the state income tax. I think that's a great point. And, you touch on the guard position. Let's stay on the guard position for just another moment. And you mentioned the possibility of bringing back Incognito as well as maybe even Gabe Jackson. I think another name you could toss out there is Denzel Good. I think if the money is right, they'd be happy bringing him back as well. But let's talk about some names outside of those three guys. Who else is out there that's on the market that you've studied over the year or so, in your film study, that you think would be a good fit for the Raiders?
I think Trey Turner, who just got cut, would be a good fit because he's a guy that is bigger. He could run some of those gap scheme concepts, but he also has the feet to run zone concepts, and this is kind of a multiple run game, so I think he fits. Joe Thuney from the Patriots, I think he would be a great fit as well. And those are the two guys that come to mind right away. And I'm trying to think of another guard that I haven't taken a full look at the list of names yet, but I would say those two guys are natural fits from what I've seen.
Ted Nguyen is our guest tonight, NFL staff writer for The Athletic. He joins us here on Just Pod Baby this week. Ted, there's a big void at right tackle right now on the roster as well. I suggested earlier in this show that I'd like to see them, go out and sign a veteran in free agency, not necessarily a high-priced veteran, but a veteran, someone who is capable of starting if needed, and then target a long-term option with one of their earlier picks in the draft, because this is shaping up to be a pretty nice class for the tackle position. What would your plan of attack be, though, if you were calling the shots at the tackle position?
Yeah, I think you do want to sign a guy that can be a solid starter at the very least, and maybe, I would say you want to sign a guy that you would peg to be a backup, but I think most of their money should go into trying to replace not a ton of their money, but a part of it will go to replacing the guards, because right now, you can't come into the season with what they have right now. But I think a chunk of their salary cap should go to fixing the defense. I mean, obviously you're going to draft some guys too, but I think you have to get a high price free agent to rush the passer. You possibly need a solid starter at free safety, and those positions cost money. So I don't think you could splurge on tackle right now, and I don't think there is a free agent tackle that is worth splurging on as of right now in the tackle position. So I agree with your plan. Find a guy that is a solid starter, and you won't have to break the bank, especially this season, and draft a replacement. That way, you have two young tackles and Colton Miller, who I think they'll probably extend, and hopefully this right tackle that you draft can be the right tackle in the future, and that's then you won't have to worry about those positions for a long time.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. You start to hit on the defense there. So let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball now. And, they got needs all over the place. Really, at all three levels, they could use some help on this defense. You mentioned edge rusher and safety. How would you prioritize position by position, the needs on the defense?
I think with Gus Bradley coming in, I think that you have to get a strong four-man rush. He is by far he blitzes the least of any defensive coordinator in the NFL. So you need a very strong four-man pass rush, and the Raiders, as we know has one of the worst four-man pass rushes in the NFL. So that definitely has to be addressed in the offseason. And I don't think you can just say, we're going to go into the draft and draft a guy and hope he's going to be a star from day one. I think you have to add a guy that's a star in free agency, and you might have to overpay, but I think that's just the position the Raiders are in. I think they need a interior rusher, and they need an edge rusher. So I think Carl Lawson from the Bengals could be a great option. I really like Bud Dupree from the Steelers, and I think maybe you could draft an interior guy in a draft, but especially with Leonard Williams being off the market now, but Dalvin Tomlinson, who played with the Giants last season, could be a good option there as well.
I totally agree with you with Carl Lawson. In fact, I was talking about him earlier in the show, and I've really been pounding the table for him. I think when you look at what he's been able to do as far as production, pressure rates, quarterback hits, those types of things, those numbers are pretty good, and he's doing it with limited snaps. I believe he's only playing about 60% of the snaps last year with the Bengals, so I do like him as well. You talked about the interior part of the defense. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to study this guy, but one of the other guys I like here on the interior as far as a pass rush presence is Larry Ogunjobi, who is with Cleveland. What do you think? What are some of your thoughts on him?
I haven't broken him down. I've watched him play a few times, but I haven't watched him enough to give you a great answer on that. I don't want to BS you.
Yeah, no problem. And then I want to kind of end this by, talking a little bit about the safety position. I think we can all agree that's definitely got to be one of the areas where they look to bring in someone. I keep saying it's got to be a veteran. I don't think you want to go into the season relying on another rookie safety back there playing with a group of guys who are already, young with Abram and Mullen and Arnett. And I think the issue that many teams who were hoping to land a safety in free agency are going to find out is that because the top three options, I get, in my opinion, they all received the franchise tag. And I'm talking about Justin Simmons, Marcus May, even Marcus Williams. Maybe not top three with Williams, but I think he was a very good safety that was on the market. What we might now see is a bidding war for some of those top end guys like Josh Johnson, even an Anthony Harris. So how crazy do you think the Raiders should go to try to bring in a guy like John Johnson, or even an Anthony Harris? Or is there another safety out there in the market that you see that might be a better fit, maybe get a little bit more bang for your buck?
I don't think that the Raiders should overspend on a safety, and a free safety in this defense is important. I don't want to downplay that, but I just think that upgrading this four-man rush has to be that priority. And like you said, those top guys, there's going to be a bidding war for those guys, and I don't think the Raiders should spend too much of their cap on a free safety. Yeah, not having a great middle-of-the-field safety can be damaging for this defense, but I think not making a priority to upgrade your pass rush can be even a worse thing for the Raiders. So it's kind of like a pick your poison type of deal. I think you can't survive without a free safety, and you're hoping that your corners are developed. Damon Arnett, you're hoping that he gets better in year two. And Trayvon Mullen, you're hoping he develops next year as well. If those two corner spots are better and Abram is better and you have a four-man rush, I think you could survive without a star free safety. I just think the bidding war for some of those big names is going to get pretty high. And I think you should bring back Jeff Heath too. You don't want him as your starter, but he did some good things when he was healthy last year, and he provides solid depth.
Yeah, all good points there. Real quick, last one. I was just thinking about this as we were chatting. I know we're obviously pre-free agency here, but I always like to get my guest's opinion on the draft. Any guys you're kind of targeting right now? Just we're talking round one strictly, only top 17 overall. Anyone you're kind of targeting right now as a guy you'd like to see them go after?
I'll be honest, I haven't studied the pass rushers quite yet. But it would definitely have to be either a pass. It has to be a pass rusher or a tackle. I don't think they can afford to pick another position in the first round other than those two guys. And I've been studying mostly quarterbacks and wide receivers, and I don't think the Raiders are going to draft either of those positions. But I mean, if they pick Jalen Waddle, I wouldn't. I think it'd be a crazy pick, but I would be interested to see how he fits in this offense too, just because I like him so much.
You never know with Gruden. You never know. He might surprise us all and go exactly. Wide receiver. So, all right. Yeah. Ted Nguyen, everyone, is our guest tonight. Ted, thanks for hopping on with me tonight and sharing some of your insight with us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good night.
All right. That was Ted Nguyen, NFL staff writer for The Athletic. And the big takeaway, I think, from that conversation is that he definitely believes they should address the defensive line big time. He seems like he is all in on the idea of paying one of these edge rushers. And he also signed off on Carl Lawson. So I was happy to hear him say that. All right, big thanks to our guest, Ted Nguyen. And that is going to do it for this week's show. We should have plenty to talk about next week, and I look forward to doing so with you and breaking it all down for you. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Enjoy some college hoops. Conference tournaments are underway, and the selection show for March Madness is on Sunday. Busy week next week in sports for sure. But until next time, I am your host, Evan Groat. And as always, just win, baby.